James is starting again on Tom Petty. Well,
So,
not starting over, just
just
continuing
starting up where we left off. So as I said before, Peter Bogdanovich, I'm sure you're significantly older than I am. Long may you run, as Neil Young once sang. Long may you run. You've done a great job. I don't know if he's done other musical documentaries. I'm sure he likes doing regular film. That's where I heard about him first. I never saw the film. Well, eventually I think I did, but when I was a kid I was very impressed with Sybil Shepherd, as I was saying before, and her particularly one appearance in that film. I think she was his girlfriend for a while, Peter Bogdanovich. But you have done the job here, my friend. You and Martin Scorsese, I don't know why anyone would mess around with rock and roll after you two guys have handled it. It's like appearing on stage after the Beatles or after the Who or something like that, or after Tom Petty. One of the things I was mentioning Stevie Nicks, I almost said Stevie Smith. They were mentioning.
Well, they interviewed Stevie Nicks was in that.
She was in a lot of places. Very complimentary about Tom Petty, and Tom Petty was complimentary enough. I've read about Stevie Nicks. I've read his reactions, when she wasn't involved or stuff like that, when she wouldn't be within earshot or whatever. And it was almost as though she were a little bit stalkerish when it came to Tom Petty. I knew back then what she was doing. She was basically trying to make, although she wasn't interested in getting Lindsey Buckingham back, trying to make Lindsey Buckingham jealous. So apparently after she split up with Lindsey Buckingham, so she's the one who made the ultimate decision. I think they had a kind of like a rough relationship, maybe not as rough as she'd like to
have presented
make up.
It. Yeah.
The idea is he was kind of like rough with her. Well, I don't know. The one account I had is when he was walking away from her. This is long after they split up, and she tried to prevent him. And like women shouldn't try to manhandle men. When women are trying to manhandle men, guys should run away and not try to manhandle them off. Mm-hmm. So I don't know exactly what happened, but she was at least as
especially because she's so tiny, right?
She is a tiny little gal, shall we say. Whatever. Gal to me doesn't really indicate what it maybe means to other people. It's like guy or whatever. Maybe you should say she's just a little guy. I don't know. But I used to think he was tall because I'd see her standing next to her, and I assumed he was a big, tall swimming type,
Yeah,
like
he's
oftentimes,
probably not very tall.
Nope, he's 5'9", average height for a guy.
Yeah, she's just a little.
And back then, he might have been a little bit taller than average height. They say 5'8" back then. So they're very kind to her. And even Tom Petty, he said, no, I think he used the term girl. He should have been saying woman.
Oh, what did I do?
But he was saying you don't have a girl in Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. You don't have a girl in Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. But the idea would have been, she does 50% of the lyrics. Even in Fleetwood Mac, she basically only did, ideally, 1/3 of the lyrics. Or songs. And she wasn't good at, however much she may have had amazing success in her solo career, and particularly in her career with Fleetwood Mac. People wanted to see her perform and stuff like that, hear her perform. I'm sure they had...
She had a very distinctive voice.
A very distinctive voice.
And she had good look. So she marketed
at one
herself
point in
well.
time, until Dave Letterman was making jokes like, and Dave, shame on you, really, you've made way too much fun of women, way too much. But he said sometime, I think in the 80s, maybe early 90s, well, it looks as though Stevie's had too many, was he saying Twinkies or stuff like that?
Oh my,
yeah,
who
really
says
shameful.
that?
Yeah, eventually...
She's lovely. She's always been lovely.
So Cher, he kind of have a love-hate relationship with, because he would have started off making jokes about her. And I get the impression Cher's a bigger kind of gal. She's got an even deeper voice than Stevie Nicks. And I get the impression you don't monkey with Cher. And she would give it back to him. And, more power to you, Cher. More power to you. When you get scumbags like David Letterman, I don't care how funny he is, you don't go around making fun of women, just pro forma, just as a matter of course, and you don't make fun of stupid people tricks. You can have stupid pet tricks, and Pauline probably doesn't like them that much.
Yeah.
Because I don't really think of, I like seeing animals make tricks and stuff like that for food or whatever.
James
I like seeing them get the
playing
reward.
with them.
But you can see, like with our little chihuahuas.
They always get the reward, and they love it.
They love it. Like the one guy, Chihuahua, he kind of has a different kind of chest. We're going to have to watch out with bloat with him. If dogs have got big chests, you got to watch out with bloat. He's a smaller kind of guy, but you got to watch it. Anyway, I could see that doing the rollover trick, he kind of had a little difficulty. Of course, he was running to weight. Things have changed a little bit with a change in his diet.
He's now getting very fit.
He's been fixed, and they say dogs who've been fixed have trouble with weight control. But, I just have him lie on his side. He doesn't have to go all the way over. The other little guy, he's got short legs anyway, because we're figuring Dashin, right? Or Dachshund?
I don't know.
Something like that. It's got short legs and a fairly long body for a Chihuahua mix. And he loves flipping over. In fact, before I'll be inveigling the other dog into doing tricks, the bigger dog, Opie, and then Elvis will be doing tricks over the left-hand side. Just
trying to upshow.
Just trying to figure out which one will get him the treat first. So he got one where he'll ramp up and spin around. It's a 360 move. He'll come down, and Opie will have finally done his trick, and Elvis will look so disappointed. Sometimes I'll just say, all right, just improvise. Just go crazy.
All the tricks you can do.
He'll do about 3 tricks in a row.
He'll do
3 different tricks,
all
like
different
spinning
kinds of
around, rolling over, trying to figure out. Oh, he loves doing them. So,
he loves it.
So stupid pet tricks. I don't really even believe in. Why call them stupid pet tricks? They're really smart pets. Smart pet tricks. But that's David Letterman for stupid, making fun of. He always was so smarmily, almost adoring with male figures who were done well for themselves. But the poor plebs and stuff like that, oh yeah, they're object of fun. Average people and lower class people, Dave, they're not objects of fun, or they shouldn't be. And so, dude, you're a rich guy. I laugh at you. You stupid flunky weatherman. That's all you were. Okay, that's how we got to start. What was that?
I liked watching David.
It was funny by times, but he was a scumbag. You don't laugh at lower class people or middle class people. You just don't. You can. I laugh at you. Because what you're dealing with is pretension there. Anyone who thinks David Letterman was superior to someone, even a pencil pusher, they've got no clue. David Letterman's just a bump on the log. He didn't contribute anything to society. He's just an entertainer. There are people out there who, like doing technological things, so on and so forth. Actually coming up with stuff in mathematics, so on and so forth. Just blow the doors off him. He always acted as though he's so smart. But some of the highlights, like they started off fairly early in the career. It's on the first album, American Girl, and they're doing the start of it. And I thought they were going to do what they do in so many documentaries. And they actually did it for that thing. All of a sudden, the lyrics come on, and they kind of faded down, not entirely out, as I recall. I'm going, no, they're doing it. But eventually, they did a full version of American Girl, and it has got smoking hot lyrics. She was an American girl, raised on promises. Wow. And it just goes on from there. Actually, the second verse, how often does that happen? I've listened to enough rock music and pop music to know the second verse is usually a huge, huge bring down. There's no third verse in this one. They don't need the third verse. But it's, what was it, like she could hear the cars rolling down on 441 like waves breaking on the beach. See, it's breaking. What happens with a car? You can be braking it, but also like crashing or something like that. Just an awesome line. The thing about Tom Petty and his lyrics, I was listening to this stuff. Things like Free Falling. And I always, because it was so simple, you could hear people singing it in concert. And they're just drowning out the band. It's easy to sing. But you listen to the verses and you're going, yeah, he just sneaks those things in. One thing I took I took a little bit too lightly when I was a kid was something off of this album called Louisiana Rain. And I was listening to the verses and saying, he just sneaks detail in there. It seems so simple. And that's the thing, about Ingrid Malmsteen saying, it's easy. Yeah, the guitar parts are easy. Pauline raised a huge point. It's not about individual tracks or
instruments.
It's about how they fit together.
Mm-hmm.
And the Beatles knew that. George Harrison, they were comparing George Harrison, I think, with Mike Campbell, and this one, Mike Campbell with George Harrison. And some guy was saying George Harrison's the best guitarist ever. And you'd see in readers' polls, Rolling Stone magazine or whatever, George Harrison be up top 3 guitarists, Eric maybe at top of Eric Clapton or something like that. People go, what is happening? George Harrison was a better guitar player, on average, than Eric Clapton. Because he would stick to the song. He's a great rhythm guitarist, and when he played lead, of course the group wasn't going to let him go wild and crazy. He only played what was necessary, but he'd add to it. You listen to his leads, some of the most angry leads you'll ever hear. People were saying he's the quiet one. Not when they let him cut loose for, like half a minute or 15 seconds or whatever. When they let him cut loose, he thought about the thing. Now, I don't think he was improvising, right? Particularly in the studio. He had the thing thought out. I don't believe in improvisation. You listen to some jazz and listen to some well-composed rock and roll, and
well, there's
if you have
a
any
time
taste,
and a place for improvisation.
There's a time and a
like
place.
They were pointing out in that with Bob Dylan,
Mm-hmm.
that they were the band, the Heartbreakers, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, were playing with Bob Dylan for. They were opening for him and then playing. They were his band for performances, and they were talking about how they really had to work for it because. He could be going anywhere, and they had to. And
they actually showed a segment of it would be I think the introduction to Knocking on Heaven's Door, where he's doing a harmonica solo, and he kind of reaches back, and I think he's telling him take it down and keep it going.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring it down and keep it going. He keeps and they're a good backing band. I don't think Tom Petty would ever do that, but it's probably the best backing that Bob Dylan's ever had, and that includes the band and stuff like that. These guys were really tight, and they knew how. They were better instrumentalists generally than the band. I know that might sound like blasphemy to some folks out there, but this is maybe the long-term the best group ever to play rock and roll, because aside from Stan Lynch on the drum, they knew their places, and that's even Tom Petty. He'd play back and let Matt Campbell do, like 15 seconds of solo or 30 seconds of solo or something like that. As far as improvisation is concerned, there's a time and the place. And the time is 30 seconds. I don't want to hear a minute solo. I don't want to hear a 3-minute solo, particularly with rock and roll. Rock and roll is, I know this might seem like blasphemy to people, heresy to people, but rock and roll is vocal music. Chuck Berry is about the vocals. He's got some sharp lyrics. Wasn't a great solo guitarist and stuff like that. A lot of Michael Campbell's stuff is like the two strings and bending and stuff like that. They're not really that sophisticated or stuff like that. But Chuck Berry would do maybe the equivalent of a verse soloing on guitar. How long is that going to be? Half a minute. Maybe more than 15 seconds. I don't care about rock and roll. I've heard rock and roll bands without. There was one playing in the park here. I could hear them. So they were playing about a block away. I could hear them because they were amped. They had no drums. They were doing Led Zeppelin. They had a better singer than Robert Plant, a woman singer.
Really?
Oh, I don't know if she'd give real competition to Ann Wilson, but maybe a little bit.
Wow.
Here she was in Lethbridge. I don't know where she's at now. But she was just smoking hot that night. And the guitarist, I think there were two, maybe only one, and the bassist, they were just chomping along. You don't need drums for rock and roll. Guess what? Elvis, I think when he first started out, didn't have a drummer. I think he had a bass player. I think it was a stand-up bass or stuff like that. It's about the vocals, particularly. And I like, which was it that had Rick Rubin, that guy with the big beard? Was it this one, the producer? I said, this guy's a heavy metal producer.
I think it was that.
Oh, holy smokes. Rick Rubin is a god to me. Not because of the work that he's done with heavy metal groups, but because he's done the work with these guys chomping along. And he might have been a kid, the same time I was, in the 60s. Fairly young kid. I was 10 years old when the Beatles hit North America. And, in an interview he said, and it was, I believe, in Guitar God magazine or whatever, they were huge around 1990 and stuff like that. So it wasn't for a 60s audience by any means. And what he said was, the stuff I return to is stuff, the harmonies from the 60s. I don't know if he mentioned Simon and Garfunkel. I'm pretty sure he mentioned the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
But the ones that stuck out for me were the Mamas and the Papas. And folks, you guys are into heavy metal and stuff like that, playing it. You can't beat the Mamas and the Papas because they actually had the occasional decent lyric. You listen to
and well, I had a lot of respect for Stevie Nicks watching that when she was harmonizing with Tom Petty.
Oh man!
Because he or she'd expected to be doing the lead, and so had Tom Petty expected her to be doing the lead, but he did the lead and she was harmonizing with him. And
great job.
Great job.
I think she had a slightly deeper voice than him. But
and the thing is, there's a lot of people who want to be rock stars, and they're right up front. They want to be right in front. With the microphone, singing away, and some of them don't even have a good voice to begin with.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, they really shouldn't be singers. They don't know how to sing. They're like, but Stevie Nicks does. If you can harmonize like that, then you should be there, right?
So I can see why she wanted to join the Heartbreakers. When you look at Tom Petty's work, it leaves Lindsey Buckingham behind. Lindsey Buckingham did one song that's maybe better than anything Tom Petty did if we leave the lyrics out of consideration, and that's called Go Your Own Way. And Stevie Nicks does a great job on the album. Not so much on later concerts, because that song was about her, she knew about it, and that sort of stuff. Stevie Nicks knew how, if you're one of those three people in Fleetwood Mac, their classic edition, there was a lot of Fleetwood Mac before Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham joined up with these significantly older people from the earlier Fleetwood Mac. If you're singing in that latter version, or last version, or close to last version of Fleetwood Mac, you had better be able to sing harmony. And when I listen to Fleetwood Mac live, you listen to Stevie Nicks singing behind Christine McVie, or Christine Perfect. She's doing a great job. I like listening to her harmonies behind Christine McVie. She does a great job on it. So, she would have worked out well if she'd known her place. And Tom Petty understood only too well that they couldn't be doing 50% of a material, or 30% of a material, as it would be roughly in Fleetwood Mac, or 25%, or 10%. I don't want to hear the Heartbreakers wasting their time on her material at all. It's not good enough. The lyrics in particular. Even she understood. She was wanting...
because she wanted him to write a song for her.
And she was constantly, after she split up with, not Mick Fleetwood, although she had a little fling with him, and
Buckingham.
Lindsey Buckingham. When she split up with him, she was constantly at him. Help me out with this arrangement. Well, I'm afraid when you got Lindsey Buckingham working on the arrangement, he should be given co-credit for a composition.
Yeah.
And he was wonderful at arrangements. You listen to Songbird, and that's a Christine McVie song. It's her and the piano. But you listen to the background. For the longest time, I never noticed it. It's there. He's kind of strumming along, kind of keeping the beat. He's like a metronome that has a human heart. And you listen to some of the solos that he played on, even on Stevie Nicks songs. Some songs that were obviously written about him. Really cutting, maybe almost catty. Understand, he wrote some cutting and catty things about her.
Yeah.
But I don't get the sense that he was, like I'm just going to float along on this one. He puts his heart and soul into it, backing up the group. Because it's about the group for him. But, like, here she is. It's one thing being on stage, you're facing out at the audience. The person's kind of behind you if you're singing lead or whatever, or you're behind them if they're singing lead. That's one thing. But, like if you're working in the studio, it's kind of like face to face, right next to each other. So here she wants him to basically be doing co-writing stuff. He wouldn't be getting credit for it. It'd be just like arranging stuff. And that's what she'd be demanding of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Yeah. And Tom Petty understood that only too well.
Yeah,
he wasn't going to say it, like her material is just not up to snuff.
No.
I can't think,
She was not a singer-songwriter as much as she wanted to be.
She understood that her compositions lacked the snap of Lindsey Buckingham stuff, but she didn't know how to, if the thing is, if you understand there's something wrong, you work on it. You don't get someone else to do it, particularly if you just dump them.
Yeah.
Sometimes dumpings like that last for a lifetime, and that's the way it is with Lindsey Buckingham. He'll never let that rest. Doesn't matter if he ends up as he has with other women, maybe even marrying and stuff like that. He's never going to let that rest. That's the way it goes. So, and she had trouble too. She dumps him. He turns up with some fantastic looking whatever, maybe another blonde, and all of a sudden she decides to get jealous. I've had that happen, right? People dump me, and they see me with someone, like making catty comments or whatever. Yeah, like, you dumped me. Like, cut it with the catty comments. Isn't it enough? Yeah, that sort of stuff. Anyway, it's they've got. Generally, they'll play whole verses. If you're doing a documentary on music, pop, but particularly rock and roll, play the verses. Play the whole thing if possible. If it's worth doing, like American Girl or Last Chance with Mary Jane. They kind of blew it with that one, I say. But at least work through a verse all the way through a chorus. Intro, verse, chorus. This is what it's about. Tom Petty is good at doing this. You listen to Here Comes My Girl, and they did work that way, right? They had him intoning the first couple of lines.
So the film is on 2 discs, and we figure it's about, 4 hours long?
4 hours, maybe. Maybe a little bit shorter than that.
And honestly, it doesn't feel too long. You're watching it, and we watched it, right away James was like, you want to go for the second disc, because
that was after about 2 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
I said, well, I want to see the next. I want to see what follows. I know the story, but there's nothing quite like seeing it. I knew the story from having read about it. I knew the story from having listened to most of it. And the funny thing is, once I had given up buying CDs about 1982. Well, they were records at that point in time. And once I got together with Pauline, about 20 years later, more than 20 years later, a little more than 20 years later, Pauline had CD player.
Oh.
And so all of a sudden I started buying CDs, and I was buying all this back material from Tom Petty. And I never realized, I never really listened to that stuff very much, but I'm listening to, how much time? 5?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. I never realized how much he maintained it. So he was doing stuff, you know, even I guess when he was getting close to death, that's worthwhile listening to. And I think he's had that type of longevity better than any rock and roller, better than Bob Dylan, because he maintained his vocal chops and stuff like that. So I don't know what happened to Bob Dylan, because it looked like Tom Petty was a serious smoker. That probably contributed significantly to his untimely early death. But I don't know what he died of. This is amazing. The people that they pull out, Dave Grohl, they showed Dave Grohl playing, I think it was on Honeybee or something like that, on Saturday Night Live. Dave Grohl didn't quite, he looked like, he looked like one of the Muppets.
He looked like Animal up there.
That's it. That must have been what I'm thinking of. And he was saying he wouldn't fit into the group, but he did. They had Johnny Depp, and Johnny Depp used to look as cool as anyone. You know, people talking about Marlon Brando being cool. Ultimately, Johnny Depp ruined his face with smoking, but I'm telling you, you know, he was wearing glasses. No one makes glasses look cooler, or made glasses look cooler than Johnny Depp. And they got Johnny Depp. They had Jackson Browne out. Roger McGuinn. Tom Petty. You know, like someone once said, is in Rolling Stone, about 1970, quoting George Harrison. George Harrison's line, it isn't written out in the official lyrics. The Pope owns 51% of General Motors. It's not true, but he does have an economic kind of impact on the world. The Pope owns 51% of General Motors. The stock exchange is the only thing he's qualified to quote us. What Rolling Stone said was, thank God, something like thank or God bless George Harrison. And all I thought in response was, amen. But Tom Petty, thank God for him. They had one of his big influences called Roger McGuinn, and they were in a studio. I think there were 2 music executive weasels there, and they're trying to persuade Roger McGuinn to do something like a Diane Warren, only worse hack job. And Tom Petty is sitting there saying, this isn't for Roger McGuinn. He'd know Roger McGuinn from when he was top of the world, mid-60s. And the executives are saying, well, can't we just add a few words? And Tom Petty is saying, no. He's saying what Roger McGuinn is feeling. And you can see Roger McGuinn, he's behind some shades and stuff like that, but you can see his heart is just expanding.